Mill threatened to call police and social services on my husband, newborn, and I because he wasn't answering her calls. My husband's family is crazy and possessive over my husband. So much so that he became estranged to them, and we reconnected in 2016 after his mother stalked us multiple times and showed up on the doorstep of the home we purchased after stalking us and discovering our address. My in-laws in particular have something wrong with them. My husband's father is very nasty and aggressive, and his mother is conniving and manipulative. They're both narcissistic. Essentially, my husband's grandparents raised him, but when he was school age he became this like commune baby to his mother's sisters and brothers. They basically took turns raising him. And honestly, it wasn't always healthy according to my husband. He considers his grandparents his parents and even lived with them again in college and as often as possible. This brings me to present day. My Phil has said such notable things as, "I don't like children, don't expect me to like your child, if you have one you might not even like your child, you can love your child and not like them," to then flipping when we said we were pregnant. The first thing he said to me is, "If you ever keep that baby from me because you're mad at me, I'll hit you right in the face." Insanity. My Mill was conniving the entire pregnancy, and has always been quiet and conniving. She starts stuff and then likes to act like she had nothing to do with it. I don't even have enough text space to go into detail about her twisted narcotic behavior. But essentially she is so possessive over my husband that it's unhealthy. His parents hate me. Always have, always will. I told my husband from the start they won't respect me as our son's mother and will likely consider me just a vessel. I was right. Ever since our son was born they've been acting nutty. They got us 16 diapers for our baby shower that our friends paid for and threw us, and then got themselves an entire nursery worth of stuff for our son only for their house and gloated about all the nice things they had. My husband is worried about them hurting our son mentally the way they hurt my husband. So my husband and I tried setting boundaries which they neglected, such as showing up unannounced or uninvited. After failing to respect us as adults or parents, my husband slowly stopped answering calls. My Phil called my husband and I both and asked me to have my husband call him. My husband asked me to call my Phil back for him, so I did. My Phil wouldn't speak to me, only wanted to talk to my husband. After pushing he said, "Well, since you want to be involved and process to accuse us of keeping our son from them." His voicemail insisted we set up some sort of visitation rights with his mother, aunt, and uncle. Lunatic behavior. His dad hung up on me after I said I was suffering from PPD and we were trying to get our son on a schedule. He then texted me, "Leave me alone." My Mill showed up at our door banging really hard the next day. Said she was going to call the police if we didn't answer, and if the police didn't help her then she'd call social services. She then alluded that she hadn't heard from my husband and wanted to make sure he wasn't dead in the bed because I told my Phil that I wasn't doing well mentally, and mentally unstable people do crazy things. Projection much. My husband had a mark on his forehead that comes and goes with stress, ironically from them, and my Mill asked if he had been hit, then alluded that I could have hit or murdered him. I'm ready to file a restraining order. No joke. Edit, for those wondering why anyone would allow someone back in their lives, victims of severe abuse, to stupid things until they have received the right help to totally detach and recover. Not only were we really young and really dumb when most of this abuse occurred, my husband's abuse was so bad it's taken years to get better. I helped my husband get into therapy because I knew he needed help that I couldn't give. I could support him and suggest firmly or otherwise what to do, but he needed to really recover from this abuse, and it takes time and help. I have watched him take great leaps towards recovery through therapy and separating himself further and further from their grasp. Now that my husband has our son to protect, a serious shift has happened in our lives, and apparently it was the shift he needed to fully and begin the process of exiling them. Today we spent time with a mutual family member who gave us a lot more insight to my husband's childhood and family that he didn't know before, that further fueled his confidence in cutting ties. Comment. Never talk about health with them, including mental health. That was a huge mistake on your part. Start denying you ever said that. Block them all, both you and your husband. Get a restraining order. Don't ever let them back in, physically or mentally. Why in the world would your husband allow his abusers into his child's life? Stop it now. Boundaries only work if there's consequences for breaching them. Get a Ring doorbell. If they arrive, don't answer the door. Let them call, you're not doing anything wrong. There's no law against wanting to keep toxic people away from you. Don't answer the phone. See if you can get a harassment order or restraining order. Don't let them use you as a go-between for your husband. You've got to stand your ground. Boundaries only work if you enforce them. Boundaries are for you, not for others. Up and her husband keep responding, that is the problem. Drop the rope. Don't answer the door, respect the boundaries you have set. You don't need a restraining order / piece of paper. Be your own restraining order and control yourself. They're using threats and fear to get up to continue engaging with them. Block, ignore, don't engage. Period. They can send over police and CPS. Who cares? You can respond politely that the in-laws are harassing you and it is causing you emotional anguish. You have your hands full with a new baby and don't need their harassment. End of story. Boundaries work when you sever ties completely. Why even keep allowing their messages to save just in case? In case of what? Block, block, block. If you're buying a house, put it under a LLC. She won't be able to do a quick Google search to find you. Make sure you tell them in the letter they are not allowed on your property for any reason, and if they trespass they will be arrested. Insane when she mentioned calling social services. Like, why would anyone normal ever think of behaving that way, let alone saying that? It's absurd, and the buck stop here when it comes to your child. And I'm usually against breaking off from family. It's almost like they are bored and causing chaos gives them something to focus on, and it just repeats. It's the lifestyle they've lived. They sound addicted to the drama, and it's a competition of who can bully you more and control you guys. They label the harassment concern and love to themselves because they are selfish narcissists that are apparently willing to even involve authorities to get their way. That should have never happened and they caused it? Don't expect an apology ever. This conflict will become another dramatic tale of woe is me for anyone who will listen, especially if they have scumbag friends. They always do. The conflict alone is something they like because it gives them more. My son and his wife treat us terrible story. Misery loves company. Up, you need to protect your children. You've given Mill leverage by disclosing your mental health status, which she certainly will use against you in any CPS visit. You need to go and see. Restraining order. The entire 9 yards. Once she threatens to destroy your family over an unanswered call, you need to protect your child. Otherwise, she can and will twist this narrative to get control over your child, and you might not have a say. Next story 2. My mother-in-law tried to throw me a surprise wedding. My husband and I eloped after being engaged for a year. We were on the fence about a small intimate wedding with only our parents, siblings and grandparents to watch the ceremony and then have a nice dinner at a beach restaurant. After I quickly figured out that would not be doable with my mother and all of her issues and my mother-in-law trying to take over every aspect of planning my wedding. For example, I had gotten quotes for 15 people for a small ceremony and she would go behind me and call and get information for 50 plus people and then report back to me. I never asked for help, and I kept getting ignored on what I wanted for my wedding. So after a lot of thought, my husband and I ultimately decided to elope, just me and him, whether anybody liked it or not. Best decision we've ever made. Also, we didn't want to spend the money to throw a party for everyone else. To each their own. So we had our own wedding, just me and him, and both got dressed up, vows, photographer, nice dinner, the whole shebang. We had a great time. Anyways, fast forward 5 months later, I found out by my friend calling me and telling me that my mother-in-law contacted her and was planning a surprise wedding after she knew our wishes. My friend warned me even though she wasn't supposed to say anything because she knew if I walked into my own wedding I would have been livid. Once I found out, I made my husband confront her and tell her that it was out of line for her to do something like that and that she needs to respect our wishes whether she agrees or not. She had like over 100 people invited, had been visiting venues with my sister-in-law and had all the decor. Everything was in a file that we found behind her back because at that point I was going to get the information I needed because I was so mad. Mind you, the entire theme or decor was nothing like I would pick, absolutely nothing. I was so upset. I still am upset about it because if you try to plan my literal wedding, what else are you going to try to do behind my back in the future? In what world is it okay to plan someone else's wedding behind their back? My relationship hasn't been the same with her since, but hey, she did it to herself. Comment. I would have played along, let Mill have her massive expensive party, then the night before said party future DH and yourself come down with a case of COVID. If it's a surprise and you're simply invited to a get-together of sorts, then it's not crazy of you to cancel last minute. Let her waste her money. But alas, I'm petty. I would have totally planned a lil honeymoon getaway for the time/date of the surprise wedding. Mill would have had to entertain all her guests some other way besides my wedding. I swear, some of these Mills are absolutely psychotic. Of course this is outrageous behavior. This is beyond overstepping boundaries. This is all out nuts. I don't know anyone who would want a surprise wedding thrown for them. And over 100 people when you two were considering 15? Is she out of her mind? Did she have a plan for a dress for you two? I am dying to know. As for me, I probably wouldn't have said anything. Have friend tell you when it was to happen and where. And the day of the event, I would have planned a little retreat for you and your husband. I would play her until about an hour after it was to start and say, "Oh husband, and I didn't want to tell you until now. But we decided to go away for a few days for a little R&R. It isn't like we had anything planned anyways, and I just knew that you would understand."